Hi trauma healers, it's Lev with Find Your Way. Today's video, what we're going to talk about is why you have no choice but to do the work to heal and release your trauma. If you don't do that, your demons will end up destroying you. It's a cautionary tale about my father, and let's get into it. So my dad, he's a complicated person. He passed away recently. By complicated, I mean nobody's all good or all bad. We're all complicated. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. We all have our positive and negative traits. But my dad actually started out with almost every physical and intellectual advantage you could imagine. He was, of Greek origin, looked like a Greek Marlon Brando. I remember family friends would be like, your dad, he's just the most handsome man we've ever seen in our lives, and the ladies love him, and he's so physically imposing and so intelligent and has a great personality. And my dad was very smart and he was very handsome. The issue is my grandparents were in the Holocaust. They were in the Auschwitz death camp. And my grandfather, he was severely traumatized by that experience, and that affected the kind of father he was. He was a raging alcoholic, a womanizer, and he would abuse my father and his sisters. Just one example, one day when my dad was a little kid, they were all just playing around on my grandfather's bed, and my dad just made some kind of comment like, "You did that," or something like that, something totally innocent. And my grandfather just snapped and beat the living shit out of him. Not just that, he would come home drunk, be pissing on the coffee table, beating them, yelling, just a raging alcoholic. And what happened was, although my father was non-alcoholic, he was basically a rageaholic. He couldn't control his anger. He would fly off into fits of rage at little or no provocation, just like an alcoholic. And the reason for that is because my dad never did the work. He never went to counseling. He never did anything to heal and release his trauma. And so my dad started off in life, like I said, with lots of advantages. He ended up marrying my mom. My mom was beautiful. He was a fish farmer in Israel, one of the top ones in the entire country. Ended up moving to the US with my mom and my sister and I, and started 2 fish farms in Houston, Texas. And if you like tilapia and you see tilapia in the grocery store, guess what? My dad was one of the first people to introduce tilapia to the United States. And so he actually ended up walking away from that business because he was homesick and moved back to Israel. My parents got divorced, and so once my sister and I went off to college, he decided to move back. But moved back right before the tilapia business exploded, and so he lost out on potentially millions of dollars. And so, but the point is even though my dad had this incredible potential, and he had everything, beautiful wife, a couple of kids, thriving business, and also, handsome, physically attractive, really intelligent, everything fell apart because he didn't heal his demons. And so I'll explain to you some of what happened. He would fly off into rages at his wife, my mom. And so my mom for years said, "Hey, you need to get counseling. we need to work on our relationship. We could get counseling together. And my dad over and over again refused, till finally my mom had it and divorced him. And then he was willing to go to counseling, but it was just too late. He still should have gone, but he didn't go on his own. When it comes to his children, he would fly off into rages at us. Like, I remember I would, maybe drop something. He would just flip out and start screaming. There were even times where, again, talk about demons, it was almost like he was demon possessed. We would just be driving in the car, having some random conversation, laughing, and all of a sudden something would switch in him, and he would get this really angry look on his face, and he would start berating me or my sister about something that had happened, I don't know, maybe months ago, maybe even years ago. And just saying things like, you guys are the worst kids, you're horrible, you're everything terrible, you're nothing good. My dad did that to my sister and I for years. Severely traumatized us. Because even though there was a little bit of physical abuse, he would grab us by our arms, and sometimes we'd have fingerprints, or he'd pick us up off the ground by our ears. Never really beat us, but he would physically harm us sometimes. The physical is not what was damaging. What was damaging was the emotional abuse. Again, just getting screamed at for the most minor inconsequential things. Having him go off on any issue at all. Or like I said, sometimes just for no reason at all. Have you had a parent who did that to you? If you did, you know how damaging it is. Other things too, like, I don't mean to bash my dad, but another horrible thing he did is we had a puppy, and the puppy, would yelp and pee, and my dad would kick the dog across the room. I was severely traumatized by that because I was too little to stop him. And it was this poor defenseless little puppy, cutest little spotted spaniel. And he would just kick him and hit him, and that dog was terrified of him. And we ended up giving the dog away, and animals can be traumatized just like humans, and he ended up really badly biting his new owner. She almost lost her arm, and it's from the abuse that my father did. So I can't sugarcoat it. Like, my childhood was hell. I hated coming home. I never felt safe at home. Neither did my sister. And so what happened was, not only was my father divorced, he had a very strained relationship with his own children for a very long time. Luckily, over the last couple of years of his life, there was a lot of forgiveness and some discussions, and we did have a better relationship. But for a large part of his life, his own children resented him. His own children were scared of him. His own children, even at times, were filled with just so much rage and fury at his behavior and the trauma that he caused. And so my father's trauma ruined his family life. Let's talk about other areas of life that it ruined. My father didn't drink. His drug of choice was food. And my father basically ate himself to death. He went from being a 5'11", handsome, like I said, Greek Marlon Brando, to kind of like Marlon Brando, morbidly obese. But even beyond that, he got this neck issue, calcification in his vertebrae. And because my dad was too stubborn to even take care of himself or ever go see a doctor, his neck ended up being fused together. He couldn't turn his head. He would have to turn like this. And he was so fat that he could barely get out of the car. He would have to grab onto things to pull himself out of the car. And so he'd be driving around, he'd almost be getting in car accidents because he couldn't like turn his head. And it was just, that's another thing. He got in several car accidents. So my father would just eat and eat and eat. And the day before he had a massive heart attack, my aunt told me they were at a barbecue and he had 7 full-size steaks. That's how addicted he was to food. And I remember, we would have dinner, then he would have dessert, then he would have a snack, and he was constantly eating. He couldn't stop eating. Why was he eating like that? Because food gave him comfort. And food helped him escape his pain. But you know what? That brings me to the addictions that we have. The ways that we try and escape our trauma and our pain. That will never ever, by the way, heal that pain or fix the issue. So what are some of these things? We can overeat. We can become alcoholics. We can become drug addicts. We can become sex addicts. We can become love addicts. We can become gambling addicts. You name it, video game addicts. You name it, you can become addicted to it. Because, again, it gives you that feeling of, I don't have to face this pain. I can distract myself. I can escape, or I can artificially feel good from these, various methods. But again, they will never heal you. They will never fix that pain inside. That's something, the way you need to look at it is kind of like having a thorn stuck in you. Now you can put numbing cream, you can take pills to numb the pain, but guess what? The pain will never go away until you pull out the thorn. And that's what it's like with trauma. That's what it's like with the emotional pain. And look, I know it's hard. I know I personally had to deal with panic attacks, severe generalized anxiety. I don't know if this happened to you, but basically feeling trapped in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why you do seek the escapes. You do seek, the partying or what have you, just to escape the pain. Not even for the fun of what you're doing, just to not be in pain. But again, it never fixes the issue. And then the next day, it's still there. You wake up, you still feel those knots in your stomach, the tightness in your chest or throat. And it's just a terrible way to live. So my dad's story, he basically taught me what not to do. You have to be humble and just accept that it's not your fault that you were traumatized in this severe way. But as an adult, it is your responsibility to heal. And look, you have no choice. And it is possible to heal. I know because I've been on a 9-year journey and I'm not fully healed, but I'm about 80% of the way there. And I know if I can do it, if I can go from being stuck in fight or flight, from constantly being severely anxious to being relatively healed and having a little bit of anxiety that I have to still face, but having most of my day be normal and be okay and actually be happy and not be trapped in negative thought cycles and also horrible, painful emotions. There is a way out. And once you see behind the curtain, there's no going back because your mind will mess with you. You'll know that there's a way out and you're not doing it. So this video is to implore you to do the work. I know it can be hard. I know it can feel overwhelming sometimes, but just know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. As long as you have a whatever it takes attitude and you're consistent and that you make healing the biggest priority in your life. Because I can also tell you that you can have all the money in the world, and if you don't feel well emotionally, it doesn't matter. You can have the most handsome man or beautiful woman in the world. If you have that emotional pain trapped in you, it will not heal you, it will not fix you. And you can do whatever other, method that there is to have a temporary escape or joy or pleasure, and it will never fix the underlying pain. You have to do the work. And so, like, I know I've said some really bad things about my father. He wasn't all bad. He taught me integrity, he taught me honesty, he taught me hard work. He was actually a good person who was just very badly traumatized and emotionally damaged. And you're obviously a good person as well, but your trauma can take you over and make you do things that you regret or might even be ashamed of. And you don't have to keep living that way. You don't have to live in survival mode. So I implore you to be patient with yourself, to be self-compassionate, and to do the work. We're on this healing journey together. I am a full-time attorney with my own law firm, so I haven't been able to dedicate the time to this work that I want to. But my commitment to you from now on, in honor of my father and his passing, is I will do at least one video a week for you. We're all on this path together. We can all heal, and we all will heal. So until next time, love you all.